Hey ladies, my name is Jenny Chaffetz and I am the host of Sideline Sisters. Are you a busy mom, powerhouse professional, or high-achieving go-getter? This show is for no BS women who want to be inspired to get off the sidelines of their lives. Ever feel like you're playing small or safe or just on autopilot? My guests are relatable women who've gone on a journey, overcome challenges, and lived to share the lessons that we want to hear. These conversations will be funny, sad, scary, wise, encouraging, and most of all, real. So whether you're driving, doing chores, exercising, walking the dog, or just laying on the couch, settle in and enjoy. I want to invite you to take back your power, reignite your passions, and step off the sidelines. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Sideline Sisters podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Chaffetz, and I am so excited to now be able to offer this show to you on video. Yes, I know, a little late to that party, but I finally taught myself the basics of editing video content, joining different clips together, and somehow compiling it into a single episode that I could upload to YouTube and Spotify so that you can watch the episode if you would like. So that is a very thrilling development in the world of gentle coaching and Sideline Sisters. And I'm really glad you're here for it. Every week, I am overjoyed to present a conversation with a woman who has a deep, significant story to share, and it's always something that we can relate to. Even if the specific hurdle that she overcame is not one that we've experienced, we're still able to extract the lessons and the wisdom and the coping strategies that she developed, and we can put all of these ideas into a little treasure box, perhaps a mental Rolodex of tactics we can use when we're faced with our own challenges and daily struggles. So today's guest, like all the ones before her, is an amazing woman. Previously a seamstress for the interior design industry, Christine Kalafus's sewing appeared in various publications, including American Vogue, and is on permanent display at the Mount, the Massachusetts home of 19th and 20th century writer and designer Edith Wharton. And while I didn't share it with Christine in our conversation, I do recall being forced to read Ethan Frome in middle school. Does anyone remember that one? Wasn't my favorite. A synthesis of her work in a cross-discipline of aesthetics, Christine's award-winning writing explores the complexities of home. She lives in Pomfret, Connecticut, and Flood is her first book. And when she says complexities of home, my goodness, there were complexities. In our conversation, she talks about childhood, putting herself through college, her husband's infidelity, her battle with cancer, raising children, finding her voice, and discovering really important elements of her being that was leading her to behave and react in certain ways that were actually causing her even more stress and struggle. So I hope you will listen to this conversation, hear Christine's story, and perhaps connect pieces of it to your own life. And be sure to stay till the end because Christine gives us beautiful words to live by. And I want to add that if you are navigating challenges in your life that feel too big to deal with on your own, know that that's what gentle coaching is here to do. I support midlife women going through midlife stuff. It could be something as big as divorce, empty nesthood, aging parents, job change, moving houses, a cancer diagnosis, or something seemingly small like low self-esteem, compared despair, overall feelings of frustration, stuckness, and even those things you can't put your finger on. Check the show notes for all the ways to reach out to me, or simply send an email to jenny@gentlecoaching.com and we can just start the conversation. I want you to know that there is always someone here who will listen and see you without judgment. Now let's get into today's show with Christine Kalafus. Christine Kalafus, welcome to Sideline Sisters. I am so thrilled you're here today.
Thank you for having me.
This is meaty. This is rich. You have a lot of elements to your story. And as unique as it is that it all happened to one person, all of it is extractable and relatable to the women in this audience, the women I know, the women living in this age bracket now, or even ever. This is all so the touch points are just so strong. So we're going to get into it. I read just a snippet of your bio to the audience already, but there's just so much. So you said something when we were chatting before recording that we'll use that as our springboard. As maybe a midlife woman, as a woman in the world, you found yourself, like so many others, doing a ton of crap, getting busy, and just, as you said, complicating life unnecessarily.
Oh, yes.
Let's talk about that.
Yes. I was a very healthy woman. I was 50 when this happened. So you want me to talk about when?
Wherever. Let's start with the complication of life.
Okay, so the complication started when I was 31. So
so not quite midlife, but
yeah, no.
and frankly, it was probably taught or ingrained from the those formative years. So
oh, definitely. I grew up dancing, so I took classical ballet from a French lady, and in Virginia, when we moved to Virginia, I was 13, and I had been taking dance all growing up. The usual cluster, right?
Yep.
Tap, ballet, gymnastics, and jazz, right, as we called it. That was moving the computer. So yeah, I took all of that. I was in dance every day, pretty much, or I was jumping in the backyard, right? Doing front hand walkovers and back handsprings. The more upside down I could be, the happier I was. And that, or riding my bike, which, this is
and if it was me riding the bike, I might have ended up upside down also.
Yeah, I was always outside, and I was really happy to do that, and be outside. And then life happens. I was the first person in my family to go to college. So I come from a blue collar family, and paying my own way to go through. So that, I think, when we push ourselves, achievement is the goal in America, right? We want to be lifted up by the people that come before us, and most families that I know anyway want their children to do better than they did, and push and achieve and try for that thing that wasn't even possible perhaps for the earlier generation. My father's a first generation American. His mother was born in Hungary, so he tried college, but he wanted to work on cars. He's a mechanic. So that's what he did. And anyway, I went to University of New Haven for my undergrad, and worked while I went. And while I was also getting engaged, I met my husband in college. And so I think the seed of doing many things that don't need to be done at the same time was planted in that moment. I was already old for a bride in my family. Everybody in my family got married at 20, and I was going to be 24 because of college. So, going and achieving that, after I did, I put it in my back pocket and didn't continue, because I never saw any example of anyone working in interior design, which is what my major was. And my minor was English Lit. And that was an accident because I took so many romantic poetry classes.
They were like, this is actually a minor, so we'll just stamp this on your diploma.
Yeah. So anyway, I worked as an insurance agent, and I just doubled down, and my husband and I bought a house, this little adorable house that's featured in the memoir that I wrote, Flood, which is why I'm here today, in part to talk about really the lessons I learned.
Yeah.
I was down a deep well, and when I came out, I had seen some things that I thought were worth sharing. And while I was in that house, I became pregnant with our twins. A few months before that, my husband had confessed an affair to me that was then over. We worked through it. I became pregnant with our twins. We had a 4-year-old also at the time. And I developed a triple negative breast cancer tumor in my chest while I was pregnant, and was not consistently not believed or listened to about this. The refrain was, it's just a clogged milk duct. It's nothing. Don't worry. Very patronizing, right? Don't worry.
Yeah,
but I was 31 and I was raised to revere authority. So, I didn't have a diploma from the medical school
yeah,
on my wall.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I apologize for interrupting your story. I mean, I mentioned to you that someone I know, I'll keep it vague to not identify, but someone I know just revealed to me that she got a breast cancer diagnosis just recently. And I feel kind of motherly toward this person. And I said to her, what are you thinking of doing, or what are your plans? And she's like, I'm going to do this and that, start chemo very soon. I have my an appointment with the doctor tomorrow. And I handed her a book that I actually was in the process of reading about. It's kind of like a guide for dealing with breast cancer, which I do not have, but it's also somewhat of a prevention um, source. And I said, I don't know if anyone's ever told you this. So, apologies if I'm repeating, and also apologies if I'm sounding authoritative, but this is your body. Like this is your journey. And just because someone told you you must follow this protocol, no, you must not. You must do what feels good for you. And so I want you to read this book that outlines a lot of possible routes you could take, and it also amazingly gives a list of like 100 questions to ask your doctor.
Yeah, that's great.
And I said, just start the book, get through that first couple of chapters with the questions. I said, and you go in tomorrow and ask these questions. And again, I sound like I'm forcing her to do something, but she was, this was a very collaborative conversation. But I said, you get to ask these questions. And if they tell you that's too long of a list, we don't have time for all these questions, I said, then you might have your answer.
Yeah. Go elsewhere.
To go elsewhere. I said, this is not a one opinion plan
No.
that you're about to engage in. You've got to, like, you get to, I don't know if you're the first person in your family or your group to get this diagnosis, but you don't have to do the first thing that's said to you.
Well, you could even have it be someone very close to you that's had it, even a family member, and you'll have vastly different experiences because it is your own body, and no one knows your body better than you, although that's not what the medical system in our country is designed for. Our system here in America is designed for everything to be outsourced. Everybody knows better than you. And my own parents, to a degree, are victims of that mentality. My doctor knows
For sure.
what I need, and
yes,
and that's so dangerous. And on the flip side, it can also be where I can think, I have thought from time to time because it's been now 24 years since this happened to me, this inciting incident, let's call it. And I've definitely thought to myself, well, I know more than they do. and that's, it has to be a partner. You have to work with your,
and that's what I loved about this book. As I showed her at the very beginning, I said, it talks about creating a team. It's a team. You are approaching this task of removing the cancer from your body, of becoming fully healthy and well, as a team. This is a group dynamic here, and the team is not just you and oncologist. I said, you got to read this and see that there's other potential voices you can include. And
that is also such great advice, for one thing. And also, it is necessary to realize that many people don't have access to the time to devote to those kinds of that kind of research and making appointments. They have to have childcare. They can't afford to, they just need to make a plan and execute the plan. It's already a huge disruption. I mean, cancer is never not a disruption. Doesn't matter how leisurely your life is. That, you know, there's many obstacles in the way, and some of those obstacles are there because of capitalism.
For sure. Yeah. I get into this debate in my household all the time. I said, you know, it doesn't benefit big pharma to tell you to go for a walk.
No.
Or to tell you to hydrate or focus on sleep hygiene. That doesn't benefit.
Right. When was the last time you saw a commercial for carrots?
Right. Well, please don't. Yeah. I mean, food, that's a whole mountain that I've been climbing. But I said to her, there's a lot of elements here for you to consider beside, and I said, by no means am I telling you not to have chemo. I said, these are in addition. Focus on some movement, focus on stress, focus on your positivity. And I don't mean toxic positivity, but I mean like gratitude and waking up and saying, wow, the sky is a really pretty blue today, or I love
that's a lifestyle change.
Yeah.
I mean, what you're talking about is
for sure
and those are wonderful suggestions. And it's what I've noticed, what I've found to be most effective in my treatment with doctors and any kind of physician is if they're willing to meet me where I am. And if they're willing to meet me where I am, which maybe is in a state where I cannot be grateful.
Right, for sure. Oh yeah, no, I'm not suggesting that someone flips a switch and says, I am going to embrace this diagnosis and be super upbeat about it.
Right.
But you know, when I changed primary care physicians, I don't remember, let's say 5 years ago, before I saw this doctor, I had done some research online. I wanted to find someone who was more aligned with my values. And I wrote her a letter, and I basically said, you know, it was like the Jerry Maguire manifesto. And, you know, this is my vision for life. If you don't jive with this, then thank you. And c'est la vie. But this is where I'm at. So if you can't meet me here, then we're not meant to work together.
Yes, absolutely.
You need to understand my mindset, where I'm at, the work that I've done so far, my thoughts on these different tactics.
Yeah, some doctors you're with, it's a long-term relationship, like your GP.
Right. That's what I would like.
Others are not. And so it's like, you know, as long as I get what I need from the interaction, then I'm fine. I mean, for example, I used to, when I would go get blood work, because I had the tumor was on my right side, and then I had a node dissection under my armpit, so they take lymph nodes out, and they want to make sure that the cancer hadn't spread, which it hadn't. So I was in the best case scenario.
So it wasn't the milk duct.
No.
Someone actually confirmed.
Yeah, it was triple negative breast cancer, which is extremely aggressive and often, well, it's a killer. I mean, all cancers, or I shouldn't say all.
Yeah.
Some are faster killers.
Yeah.
This is an aggressive type, but nobody told me this. Nobody told me the kind of cancer I had. More patronizing. I was told it was garden variety.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, as if there's such a thing, which I did not learn was not a thing until, let me think, I was probably 40. This is less than 10 years ago. I would still go to an oncologist every year, even though it had been many years since I had gone through treatment. It was just I was told it was part of the quote protocol. So I had moved out of the area from where I lived, and I went to a doctor in Hartford, in Connecticut. And she said, did anybody ever tell you what kind of cancer you had? And I said, yeah, garden variety. Like it's a zinnia, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And she said, there's no such thing as garden variety. Wow. And she took a piece of paper and drew me a diagram with 3 circles. And she said, this is you had triple negative intraductal carcinoma. And it's called triple negative because there's no known reason. It's not estrogen, it's not progesterone, it's it's an unknown factor. We don't know what helps grow it. And if you're
Wow.
pregnant and develop breast cancer, the common thinking is often that it's estrogen related because you're pregnant and your hormones are skyrocketing. Mine was not. And she said, it's highly deadly and you're lucky to be here. And I remember sitting there and I had a sensation that reminds me of what my aunt told me when my cousin sat next to her on the sofa and put the video in of him jumping out of an airplane. And she didn't know he was going to jump out of an airplane. And so sitting next to her and showed her the video that he had done it. And she's a wreck. And he says, but I'm right here. I did it.
Right.
I didn't want you to know about it ahead of time. And I kind of had the sensation of that I dodged a major bullet, but I dodged it because I actually moved. Like physically, I insisted that something be done. And I did not take the patronizing, it's nothing, dear. And
yeah, it's all in your head.
If I hadn't, I wouldn't be talking to you today. And I would have had motherless children and my husband would have been a widower. And yeah.
Okay. So what did that experience, that journey through, as you had called it to me earlier, gender bias in medicine and development of trust of your own body, what was that experience like, and what did that offer you?
I felt superhuman and I felt that I could do anything if I wanted to do it, which is something that I was raised with. I grew up in the 70s. And I had the kind of mom who, she didn't go to consciousness raising groups in the 60s. I mean, I was born in 69. So by then it was in the water like fluoride, and she just said, you can be anyone, you can do anything. But usually that was attached to like a CEO of a company.
Right, for sure. Yep. That's what I was thinking. Right. You can be president. You can be an astronaut.
Right. Women can do anything. And yes, it's true. I do believe that's true. However, my idea of anything was write anything, say anything, be believed, be equal, and parity. And I was, what did my mother say? She said, your innocence died that day. The day that, and I was 31 years old. So I got to live in a fairy tale for quite a while. And that's not to say that I don't believe that I can, or any woman or any person can be and do if they're determined enough to do something, and maybe multiple things at a time, like raise children and go through chemotherapy and save their marriage and, move house and, sweep out the water from their basement when their house keeps flooding. All of those things. Yeah, you can. I did. But the problem is what happened after, when the water receded and my marriage was intact. My children were all healthy. I had a clean bill of health. That's really when that was a demarcation point. It's like being in an airport and choosing like what flight, or do I even want to get on a plane, and that wasn't recognizable to me, that I began a 15-year experience with putting myself in intense situations for no reason.
For no reason?
Well, survival, I think, was at the idea of it. Also, I mean, if we're going to get really psychological, I think part of it had to do with outrunning any more diagnosis. So I started jogging, running, racing my bicycle. I joined a group and I raced on road racing and on a bicycle for 12 years. Like 150 miles a week was the average. And 1 year I did 50-mile rides with a couple of what they call centuries, 100 miles in there.
I had a very brief time as a cyclist, so
I
got some of the lingo.
Yeah, and then there's this other lovely thing called Strava, which is an app.
Yes, I've heard.
You can become addicted to, and and it was eventually
there were no apps when I was riding. There were no phones when I was riding. Thankfully.
This kind of thing,
Yeah.
it sounds like it's fun, right? Like, oh, you
Yeah.
can see how fast and hard you rode your bike compared to on that road down the
Yep.
street
Yep.
compared to yesterday when you rode
Yeah.
that street.
Yeah. The land of PRs and yeah.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. And
Yeah.
Queen of the Mountains also.
Wow.
And then when somebody takes your Queen of the Mountain, you get an email.
Oh,
Yeah,
that must feel great.
it does. It's so awesome. It's like, no, that kind of thing. If I make myself as healthy as I can be, then nothing will ever hurt me. And that's, of course, not true. Of course, you can be hurt.
And in doing, in the attempt to be as healthy as you can be,
Right.
what kind of stress and hormonal imbalance
sure.
and chaos could you be creating?
Right. And this is not to say that cycling is not great for other people. And I
Sure.
loved it. I had a great time most of the time.
Sure.
But what I recognized was I was leaving all this energy, all this burst of, I've always had a high energy personality. My mother used to say, open the door and let her run outside for a while. Like,
I was just gonna say, you mentioned the gymnastics and the flips and the biking. Yeah, I got that picture.
Right. So just because I can do something, does that mean I should be doing it? And so that was what I was doing all the time, and also moving. So my husband and I, my undergrad, I think I mentioned, is interior design. And I never worked as an interior designer per se, but I would work on my house. We would be like those people you see on HGTV, except we swear all the time, and they would never like,
That would be the best show. You know that. You just need HBO version. Like,
right. Exactly. Maybe I could pitch that.
Right.
But this is our fourth house that we're in now that we've done since we've been married. And it is also, I'm so excited to say it is officially the longest place I've ever lived. We're not even here 10 years. And I've never lived anywhere longer really than I think 4 is my lucky number. After 4 years, I get antsy and I'm ready to buy a new house, sell the one and make a little money. And I mean, it's not a business strategy. I don't recommend it, not the way that we do it, but we live in them and build and change. And I mean, there's nothing, I love transformation more than just about anything. A paint color is my happy place. But that kind of constant transformation and not sitting with where I was in a moment, I didn't even know how to do that. I didn't even know how. I had a therapy. I was going to therapy for a very short period of time while I was in grad school, getting my master's in writing, as my oldest was going to college, right? So,
nice. Timed that well.
Emblematic of what I'm talking about. It's like, oh, the oldest is going. What do I want to do now?
Right?
So
God forbid you have 5 minutes to think about it.
Right. And I'm in therapy, and the first session, the therapist says to me, "Where are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm right here with a box of Kleenex." And he said, "No, you're not here. You're in tomorrow." And I mean, I have a chill even thinking about it now and saying it to you, because I knew what she meant. I felt that in my body, that I wasn't actually here. I mean, we hear a lot these days about, are you present? Are you in the moment? All of this. And it's become a cliche because, I mean, yes, of course, we are nowhere else other than in this moment. But do we know it? And are we thinking about, how do I feel right now? What do I need right now? Not what am I going to need tomorrow? But that kind of preparation is about survival. And once you have a roof over your head, you have food, your basic needs are being met, it's not about survival anymore. It's about something else.
So interesting. Hey ladies, I'm interrupting the show to tell you about Gentle Coaching. Gentle Coaching is my business. It is where I offer life coaching and breathwork services to midlife women and their young adult daughters. And there are a few different ways that you can stay in touch with me so you know everything that's going on. The first is Instagram at Gentle Coaching. The second is Facebook at Gentle Coaching. The third is on my website, gentlecoaching.com. And those are all gentle with a J, by the way. And the fourth is my email newsletter. Are you on the list? You can grab the links to all of those things in the show notes. Now let's get back to the episode. You know, that reminds me of when I did my life coaching certification. Right from day one, we were taught an exercise to be in the moment, in your body. It was all about being in your body.
Right.
So closing your eyes and going through a process of like a body scan, but not just saying like my knee hurts. Yes, you can notice that, but it's also like what your therapist, like where are you? What and what's happening right now? So being able to sit in stillness for 2 or 3 minutes and say, like, my head is a cyclone. Like there's just, I can't stop the swirling, or I feel a tightness in my chest.
Right.
Having this acknowledgement for what is present, not just I'm here in my chair and I feel the cushion under my rear end. And what's interesting, the reason I'm bringing that up is that I thought I was doing it right during that whole, 10-month, 11-month process.
Right.
And I've continued doing a lot of personal growth work since then. And it's only recently that I've had this light bulb of saying, what the fuck was I doing? Like I was focused on the knee pain or the cushion under my rear end. I wasn't doing it right. And that's okay because I wasn't available for it yet.
That's so interesting that you talk about the right way.
Right. And I did use that on purpose. Like I wasn't doing the exercise she was teaching.
That's okay.
Right. And that's what perhaps I was open to experience at that time.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that I've recognized now like you did in your set, like what it's like to be in that moment and say, I'm unsettled.
Yeah.
Not my knee hurts, because my knee might hurt still, but it's not about my knee hurting. It's go deeper than the knee. What else is there?
Right. And the whole reason I went to therapy in the first place was because I closed my sewing business. I was a seamstress for the interior design industry for 10 years. And I had my own clients. I made drapery, bed skirts, the whole 9 yards, Roman shades, all of that myself with my own 2 hands. And I worked for interior designers and I had my own clients. And I had this wonderful experience of being quoted in the New York Times. The Edith Wharton estate is in Lenox, Massachusetts. And she, in case your listeners,
I was just in Lenox
with Edith Wharton because she died over 100 years ago. She's one of my idols. She's the first woman to win the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. For is it the House of Mirth? And anyway, she lived in Paris, but she was raised in New York. And actually, she was born a Jones. Keeping Up with the Joneses comes from her family, that expression. But anyway, she had a house that she designed and built in the Berkshires of Massachusetts. And I had the lovely honor of working on many, many sewing projects there. And one of them was the boudoir in that house. And I made over 500 feet of ruffle by hand for the leading edge of the drapery and the drapery themselves. And so I'm installing that on a really hot day in 2013. And this reporter is there from the New York Times. And she talks to everybody, right? She talks to the director, she talks to the interior designer who I collaborated with on the project. And I'm just steaming the drapes in the background, right? Like I'm just trying to disappear. The seamstress's job is to not be there. So everybody else gets the spotlight and I'm the window dressing person. So like set designer. And I'm doing that. And the reporter comes up to me and asks me something. And I answered her. I said, it's like creating a souffle with fabric, and out of everybody she talked to, she quoted me in the article. And then other things I had done were in Vogue the previous year in that house. And I felt like my life had pivoted. Something was different. I couldn't imagine doing anything more with fabric than I had already done. and it was time for something new. And then my grandmother died a few months later, and I eulogized her, which I had never done in my life. I had never stood up and talked about a loved one like that. And I recognized something happened. I made people laugh. And that was a very powerful feeling. Not like powerful, like maniacal, like
Right.
evil person power, but a kind of recognition that there was something that I was capable of that I didn't ever know that could do that. And so I immediately went to a writing workshop. And that moment, that was 2014, and it was 14 or 13 years after cancer and colic and, flooding basement and rebuilding a marriage. And I wanted to write about funny stuff, right? I wanted to write about, cake and my failed attempt at being a professional cake baker, and, all this stuff
Sure.
that I found, like, making fun of my life, and not making fun like
Right. Having fun.
self-deprecating, but
Yeah.
I think pretty well of myself, so I could handle it. And I was enjoying this idea of communicating in a way that with a group of people through writing that was new, not just like at a party where your kids are on the floor playing and you're making everyone laugh. Like, this was something else. So I sat there in this writing workshop, and the instructor led us through a writing exercise. So kind of like a guided meditation, which I had never done in my life. And she says, okay, I want you to write about a traumatic moment in your life, which is a huge ask. Like, I think about it now. I taught writing for 10 years, and I don't think I ever said that in a writing workshop, but everybody started writing, and there's 10 of us at a table. And then when we were finished, she said, you can either share the piece of writing that you brought with you, which mine was a funny story, or you can read the piece you just wrote. And it was only a couple of paragraphs because we only had 5 minutes. But something made me read the thing that I just wrote. And it was the scene that ended up in the book. I hardly edited it at all. And it was the moment I was waiting to hear if I had metastasized cancer, waiting in the doctor's office. My breasts are about to explode with milk because I'm, immediately postpartum. And swaying, waiting, like I felt like my body was out of control and everything was out of control, and waiting to hear this news. And after I finished reading it, nobody laughed. And I had a chill down one whole side of my body. Like, I don't know what just happened. I don't know why I read that. Why did I put myself in this vulnerable position? Why am I even thinking about this thing that was so awful and so hard to live through? Why do I want to write about that? I didn't know I did. And the instructors said, we want to know more about that. We want to know more about that. And so then I just started writing like a maniac. And and that's why I went to therapy.
Like, wait a second, there's all this stuff.
Right. Well, in the moment of a crisis, in multiple crises happening at once, we don't have time to process.
There's no capacity. Yeah.
Do this now, take this medication, take this nap, go to that place, eat this. There's no processing. And writing it, I'm not going to say it was therapy because that minimizes the craft that I tried to apply, but it was in a way therapeutic because I opened up a wound that I thought was a long healed scar, and I didn't realize it was still gaping, and it was still very raw. And by writing about that and about talking about it and going to open mics and doing all of that, getting on stage, giving it a place to live that wasn't in my body anymore was, I think, the best kind of medicine I could have ever had.
Oh, I feel like I need a nice deep breath after that. So is that something that you suggest to other people going through traumatic experiences?
Oh yeah, if you have the time, right? Depending on what it is, I would say yes. In fact, while I was going through chemotherapy and radiation and trying to get comfortable with this new changed body that had a giant scar across it, my chest and dealing with that, I took notes. I have diary entries that I would just type up really quickly. But what was remarkable to me, looking at them, reviewing them a decade plus later, was how often I had an exclamation point. Like, the babies are crying all the time. I had chemo yesterday and I can't stop throwing. Everything ended, and I never use exclamation points. It was remarkable to me. I'm like, who is the woman who wrote this? I don't even recognize her. And what I realized was every exclamation point was like a place to dig. It was why an exclamation point is, alert, right? Alert. There's something here worth noticing. And what needed to be opened up and excavated further when I had an exclamation point. And so that's what I spent years doing.
Oh, that's really profound. What or how could you guide someone who's listening to this to source their own personal exclamation points?
Mm-hmm. I would say first that everything that happens to us is our lived experience and belongs to us, and do whatever we want with. So if we want to turn it into a piece of pottery, if we want to turn it into anything, we can, and we also don't have to. It can be simply self-revelatory to be able to look at, our culture doesn't want us to look back so much. It's all about looking forward, and to look back and say, wow, look at that. I mean, reading this memoir, I read this book aloud 7 times to make sure I didn't have any, grammatical mistakes.
Sure.
I noticed reading it aloud was more effective than reading it silently. I found many more mistakes reading it aloud. And as I was reading it the second time, it was like 2:00 in the morning because I couldn't sleep, and it was a snowstorm. I'm in Connecticut, so it was snowing this past winter in the middle of the night all the time. And so I was up and I'm reading this book aloud, and I was like, damn, bitch, like, you've been through some shit. Like, who is this? Like, who is
Right?
She is, like, to look back and see the landscape behind you that you just traversed is kind of amazing, because we're always looking that way. We're looking toward where's the sun setting? We're not looking at where it came up in the first place. And I found it gratifying, and in a way that I can't say it's an achievement. It's something much deeper than that. And it's not something you can put on a resume or you can monetize. It's something, it's resilience, and it is, it's a feeling.
Yeah. That is the thing. And I find myself talking to people, whether it's friends or, within content or an audience, talking on that point of take a second to look at, I mean, you got divorced. Okay. I'm assuming that process wasn't easy.
Right.
And here you are on the other side of it with, a beautiful relationship with your children, and you're living, so something, I don't want to say as simple as divorce, but maybe as common as divorce.
Sure.
You came out the other side of that. What else? Oh, you were bullied in middle school? Okay.
Right.
Let's look back on that, and now can you deal with the broken water heater?
Right. Well, and that is, we are constantly being told that we can improve ourselves. I mean, women, especially now. I mean,
and I'm a part of it. I'm in this personal growth industry.
Well, there's a difference between helping someone as they're already engaged on their own. It's not a manipulation if you're engaged in it and you're well, now I'm thinking of cult leaders. Okay, so sometimes it could be a manipulation, but I would say if you're conscious of what you're doing and you're making a decision and you're a grown up, you're choosing something, as long as it's working and you're finding that you feel better and your life is improving and the problems are they're not going to disappear, but you're finding new tools to handle they come up, so it doesn't derail everything else. Like, for example, I had mentioned that this resilience that I have, that all of us have, if we come to, I forget who it's, but if you've survived your childhood, you have, you have
Exactly.
resilience. Yeah. So we all have it. The challenge for me was recognizing that I didn't need to overcomplicate things because I had resilience, that I could constantly be testing it and seeing how strong it was, that I could rely on it and I could trust in it. And that has a lot to do with being present. I think those things are entwined. That when I turned 50 and it was my birthday, and it was also the day of a bike ride, a group ride that was every Monday night. And I found myself not wanting to go after 12 years of doing it almost every Monday for 10 years. And I wanted to just lay in the grass with my dog, and all the little bluets and the buttercups were coming up because it's the end of April. And I just wanted to lay there and not be in a race, not be racing through my life.
Mm.
And I started triggers, which are when anything's difficult, I want to take action, like clean out a closet. And I mean, I have a very organized closet, which is a lovely thing, but for fuck's sake, why? Like,
Right,
like who
right,
cares,
right.
right? And no one's coming over to judge my closet, but there's this, I recognize that when things got hard, whatever that was, one of my kids couldn't figure out which college to go to, or how are we going to pay for it, or
Right.
all of those things. Well, maybe I should move. That was my impulse. Let's find someplace else to live.
Yeah.
And that happened just recently, actually. A couple of years ago, my mom has MS and she's been struggling. My father, they're married, they're together, they're in their late 70s. And, that was upsetting. And I kind of wanted to move away. So I almost moved to Savannah, Georgia. And my friend is a real estate agent. We were this close to listing the house when I came to my senses and realized I was doing it again. I was overcomplicating my life not no reason. The reason
Right,
was
right,
I was uncomfortable and I
right.
didn't want to feel what I was feeling. I wanted to focus on packing boxes.
Yeah. Pardon the interruption, but I have to tell you about my absolute favorite place on planet Earth. It's called Canyon Ranch. Have you ever heard of it? It is a wellness resort, and there are several locations in the United States. I have been to the one in the Berkshires of Massachusetts, and I'm telling you about it so that you can enjoy 10% off this spectacular place. Everything from the food, the staff, the facilities, the workshops, the exercise classes, the overall vibe, it's first class. So I hope you will check it out. You can book online or over the phone using code SIDELINE to save 10%. And now let's get back to the show. That is so relatable.
Mm.
This need to, or compulsion to
Yes.
occupy
Mhm.
our time, our bodies, so that we don't have to notice how
Mhm.
we feel and
Mhm.
process how we feel. It's much easier to take on a task.
Oh, sure. And our country wants us to believe that the body is a machine, which it is not. It's an organic experience that we're having in a body. We're not machines, we're human beings. And to sit with a feeling and not run from it is what it means to be alive. And I want to be alive. I don't want to just be not noticing my life if I'm living it. I want to feel it. I want to have all of those experiences. That's what makes it good. And what I noticed when I stopped cycling and sold my bikes, I opened up all this opportunity for other things. And I didn't know what they were. I didn't have the thing that I was going to do next.
Right.
The place that had been cycling, which took hours and hours of my week every week,
I would imagine. Yeah.
was now completely open.
Right.
And what was I going to do with that time? I decided to let myself not worry about it and enjoy it instead.
What a
And
novel idea.
it changed my life. That's all I can say, is that I feel like the person I was supposed to be.
So, what is your advice for women who might be in this moment of they are around 50, they're feeling like the clock is ticking on life, or now I'm, that over the hill expression, but like we're on the descent
Yeah.
of lifespan. So there's that urge to pack as much as we can into time.
Right. Bucket list things.
Right. There's that expression. But you're talking about taking on all these things and overcomplicating life and filling every minute of the day. So how do we grapple with the, let's call it, bucket list desires, which do fill time, versus removing items from the schedule so that we could just live organically?
Right. I would say notice when you feel the best. So maybe it is a bike ride that you feel the best and you have the time. But I would say it's so odd for me to give advice because like nobody can tell me anything, right? I'm very
You're here to give advice.
I'm very rebellious. So maybe I would say the thing that makes us the happiest, or one of the many things that make us happy, there's so many joys in life. Food is one. I love gardening. I'm a big flower person. I love, punk rock. Like those joyful things, I've made room for them because there was no room for them before. And I made a space for me to be a girl again at 56 and think, oh wow, I got a record player and I'm listening to record. I never thought I would blow dust off a record again in my life. Like I thought that would never be a thing I would do again.
Yeah.
But actually my sons, I have my twins are 24 now, and they're like, actually all three of them are really into records. Like if they've made a comeback, right? So I bought a record player and I put it next to my garden in the shed. And it's a Bluetooth record player, and I listen to, Blondie while I'm weeding. Like
I
it
love
makes
Blondie.
me so happy.
That's so good.
I'm not listening to a podcast about how to make better lists or how to set better goals. I'm like, I'm fucking over goals. Like,
Right.
I mean, it's not like I don't want to achieve things. I do, but I don't want goals to be the purpose of my life. I want the purpose of my life to be enjoying it as much as possible.
Yeah.
But
Amen to
also,
that.
yeah, but also making room for investigation and intellectual pursuits. So I'm reading philosophy. I never thought I'd read that. I'm fascinated with certain French philosophers, and one sentence can take me for the rest of the day. So I allow myself to, it feels decadent, to be perfectly honest, to allow myself to explore my brain and the things I want to think about and turn over in my mind. And nobody else needs to know what those are unless I choose to tell them. It can be private and it can be personal. And in this world where everything, like including our dinner, is on Instagram, maybe we can have some things that are private.
Oh, such a bizarre concept in 2025. Be private.
Yeah.
Savor the privacy.
Yeah.
So what would you say, since we began the conversation, or early on in the conversation, we were talking about growing up with the message of achieve, do, perform, excel more than your parents did,
Right.
collect accolades. What would you say now at this age, with the hindsight that you have, are your biggest achievements?
Oh, I knew what I loved. And even though I got a little distracted by celebrating the things I was good at, by kind of believing what my mother's generation believed, at least my mother's circle of friends, because she's not a whole generation, she's just one woman, which was a marriage is two people doing everything together. I realized that that's not true, that at least not for me. My husband and I are very polar opposites. I mean, I'm a Taurus, he's a Libra. There is no way this should work in the world. But we've been together since we were 19, and we've been through, his infidelity, twins, which, by the way, I looked up statistics once upon a time, and the most common cause of divorce in marriage was multiple children at once.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, money, it didn't even beat like money. And actually, I think it was the only ones that beat it were if one of them was a police officer.
Yeah.
And one of them, the police officer, had shot someone. That was the most common cause of divorce.
Wow.
Then it was parents of multiples. So twins, triplets, that kind of thing.
Yep. Yep.
So we've been through all that, man. Like we've been through it, like, and now like we're like, oh, we have an empty house. It's us and the dog, and we could be. And a lot of people get divorced at that point and separate. And what I love is that we do have our individual pursuits, but we do have some things we're really good at together, like working on the house, working on the yard. We're a great team like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also love my time alone, and I love my books, and sometimes I discuss it with him, but I don't expect him to be interested. And I'm not going to change what I'm doing to please him, which I didn't always do. I did, what is it? Hide your light under a bushel. That was me for quite some time in my 20s, definitely. I wanted to be a couple and not, I didn't know what that, I only saw examples of that in my family. And realizing that, yes, you're a couple, but you're also an individual. That is a lesson that I won't need to relearn again. Like I won't keep making that mistake.
Yeah, I was just telling my daughter this morning about someone I know who splashed something on Facebook, and my husband is my best friend, and they do everything together from pickleball to grocery shopping to morning coffee to walk the dog, everything. And
that sounds oppressive, but okay.
Right. She said to me, is dad your best friend? I said, no, not even close. I don't mean to be a jerk, but we're doing the marriage thing, and we're working on it and making it, last, because even without multiples or cancer, there's plenty of obstacles in our way.
Yes.
But I have other relationships that I would categorize as best friend, close friend, and it's not him. He doesn't need to check every box that this other couple checks for each other. It was funny timing of that showing up, but it is an interesting thing to reflect on the messages we were told growing up as what is an achievement. Yes. And I don't say it to brag, and I don't talk about it often. I have 2 Ivy League degrees. So fucking what?
Well,
like
it is a thing.
It is.
Who is it? I think it was Maya Angelou who said, "You don't have a degree; you earned a degree." And so I sometimes, not that I write that very often about my degrees, because it just sounds like a ladder. It doesn't sound like an experience. It doesn't sound. It just sounds like tick that box, tick that box, tick that box.
Yeah.
A list of credentials is not a story, and and I'd rather. I mean, even motherhood. I think the least interesting thing about me is that I'm a mother. I don't think that that's an achievement. It's biology. It's in relationships that I engaged with. I wanted to have them, and I did, and I'm lucky that I was able to. But that's not necessarily interesting that I have children, and that I'm a mother.
I think the depth of the relationship is interesting to me, but I remember a million years ago, I think I said, I feel like it was my mother-in-law. I said, oh, so-and-so is pregnant, or so-and-so just had a baby. And I feel like it was her. It was like, anyone can have a baby. Now, I know, but like, actually that's not true.
Right.
But her sentiment was exactly what you're saying. Like, so what?
Right.
So what? So she got like, whoop-de-doo. She got pregnant. She had a baby. she, performed a biological function.
Right, right.
You can also brag that she, had diarrhea or got her period. Big deal. Like,
Right, right, right. Well,
yeah.
it has to do with so many things, but one of them is this, a culture that wants that to be the focus, and that is the thing that is celebrated, and it's very fairy tale oriented. This is how a woman should behave, and this is how a man should behave. And we have allowed some vagaries in our culture, but in general, it's still pretty straight and it's still pretty linear. And so recognizing where, yeah, we live in capitalism, we live in a patriarchal society, but how do we find happiness regardless? How do we acknowledge our rebellious selves? And I don't break any laws. I'm not interested in
No.
causing trouble, like I talked about, like, complicating my life.
Yeah, that would be a complication.
Yeah, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in freedom. and and wherever I can find it, like, my autonomy is the most important thing to me.
Mm. Wow. Okay. So I want to ask you, as we start to wrap up here, you said so many really beautiful and remarkable things, but is there anything that you want to offer the audience in the realm of advice, parting words, wisdom, insight that you haven't been led to say yet?
I think that we approached it and maybe subtly mentioned it, but I would say judgment is the biggest enemy. Self-judgment is horrible. I mean, it's bad enough when other people judge us, but I think we do it mostly to ourselves. Something we were talking about earlier, like, oh, I'm not doing meditation right, like as if it's a
Right.
test. And we do that, and I've been in a yoga class where I've heard instructors, not good ones, talk about what the right way is.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in being dictated to. I think when I started, to trust ourselves, we know what we need and we know what's best for us, and to constantly have that discernment when everything is coming at us, from Instagram to the news. This is what a beautiful life looks like. No one knows what your beautiful life looks like except for you.
I love that. Discernment is a missing puzzle piece for so many people. And I love the word, as you said it earlier, the outsourcing of decision making and power is an epidemic.
Yes. Yeah. So I want to give away my power. I was in a writing workshop, one of the first ones I was at after I decided I was going to go get my master's. And I was at the 92nd Street Y in New York City to listen to this really wise and beautiful woman. Her name was Pat Schneider, and she wrote a wonderful book called Writing Alone and with Others. And she used to do writing workshops for free to impoverished women in Chicopee, Mass.
Wow.
Yeah, her husband was a reverend, and they Protestant, and she did a lot of this. And she was speaking at the 92nd Street Y in 2014. So I went, and she's since passed away. She was a kind of a magical person. Like, you kind of see them and like they're kind of glowing, and she's a very unassuming lady. And I remember being there, and there was a part where, we went around the room, and there's 100 people, who considers themselves a writer. We were in a giant circle, 100 people in a circle. And she says, and the question was, who considers themselves a writer? Now, meanwhile, everybody there was there to write, right? So
Right?
I raised my hand, and there were people there that didn't. And so someone said, why didn't you raise your hand? And the woman said, well, that's for a publisher to decide, or, like, whoever takes my
Right.
work. And
Yep. The achievement.
right. And Pat said, don't give away your power. Yeah, you're the one that decides you're a writer. If you are writing, you're a writer. If you're
Yeah.
painting, you're an artist. You're a painter.
Yeah.
Assume it and take it in and live it. Don't wait for someone else to anoint you with it. We have to anoint ourselves.
That's good. That is so good. All right, Christine, please tell the audience what you're up to, where to find you, and how to get more of you.
Oh, Well, my memoir comes out June 1st, and I will be locally in Connecticut. So if people are in Connecticut or in the Rhode Island, New York area,
Mhm.
I will be at RJ Julia, the bookstore at Wesleyan, which is in Middletown, Connecticut, at the end of June. And my website is just my name, so it's easy to find these
Great.
events. And I'm on Instagram, it's just my name. I have no aliases.
Nice. Now putting it all out there, owning it.
Yeah.
Because why not be proud of everything you've gone through and learned along the way? Wow. All right, Christine, I would like to invite you to please raise your glass
Oh,
and we will say cheers to anointing ourselves.
yeah. Thank you.
Cheers.
It's iced coffee. I hope that's okay.
That's perfect. I wish I had some of that. Thank you so much for everything that you've shared, everything that we now all feel better knowing, more enlightened because of it. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
I wish you so much success with the book and the speaking and everything else you choose to do. I hope your garden grows.
Thank you so much. This was a pleasure.
How great was that conversation with Christine Kalafus? I mean, she is just a model for us all on how to live authentically and in a way that honors our integrity, our whole being. Now, let me get into Christine's many brilliant notes from the sidelines. Number one, complicating life unnecessarily is normal. However, how amazing would it be to get to the place where we realize we don't need to overcomplicate our lives because we are resilient. The reason we overcomplicate our lives is to avoid discomfort and avoid feeling hard feelings. Number two, in America, we live in an achievement driven society. The goal in most families is to raise the next generation to achieve more than the previous one. Number three, no one knows your body better than you do. This is a message that has come up numerous times on this show. In America, in particular, we teach people to outsource power, especially in the health and medical realm. But remember, you get to work with your doctor. You're a team. So find a doctor to meet you where you're at. Number four, women can be anything they desire if they're so determined. Number five, when we're used to living in chaos and then it stops, it's normal to create more of it. We do it for survival purposes. Number six, think about this question. Where are you? Where is your head at? Are you focused on tomorrow, the next thing, the next hurdle? Most of us don't even know we're living in the present moment because we're already problem solving in the future. Number seven, in a crisis, there's no capacity or time to process big emotions. But after the dust settles, try writing. It can give your thoughts, your feelings, your worries a place to live that's not in your body. Number eight, when we're focused on the future and looking ahead, we don't see the treacherous landscape that we've already traversed. When we're focused on the future, we block ourselves from appreciating our own resilience. Number nine, notice when you feel your best. There are so many joys in life, and when we begin to uncomplicate our lives, we'll have more room for joy. Number 10, the vision of a healthy, solid, mutually compatible relationship is one where you have individual pursuits as well as things you do together as a couple. Number 11, self-judgment is the worst. Try to stop doing that. Begin to focus on discernment. No one knows what your beautiful life looks like except you. And finally, number 12, don't give away your power. It is our duty and our privilege to anoint ourselves. Boom, mic drop. How good was Christine Kalafus? Now just run out and get her book Flood, and you can continue hearing her incredible story and wise words. I want to thank you for tuning in. Please go ahead and share this episode wherever you listen to it, whether it was a podcast app or YouTube. Share it with a friend. I am committed to spreading the news about all of my wonderful guests, and I need your help to do it. So share the episode, like, rate and review wherever you're listening, and let's get more people listening to these impressive women. And by the way, if you have an amazing story to tell, or you know someone that does, please get in touch with me. The world has no shortage of impressive, resilient women with bold stories to tell. So let's strengthen the platform of Sideline Sisters and get them on here. And be sure to tune in next week for the incredible, heartbreaking story of Liz Hirsch-Naftali. She courageously comes on this show to talk about her family's unfortunate connection to the violence in Gaza. And she talks about the work she's doing to bring hope and humanity to politics, to Israel, and to the world at large. You don't want to miss it. Have a spectacular week, and I'll see you right back here next time.